goods. I think this year is going to be volatile, and I think it's going to be choppy and a trading range at best. If we get resolution on the war, that's fabulous, right? But we still have to deal with inflation, and it's rampant. It's everywhere. I don't think the Fed can do anything, really, to change that. Even if they did 8 hikes this year, which is what the bond market is pricing in, I just don't think that that's going to mean anything to inflation. So we have to watch that.
The crushing fallout from Bidenomics is hitting Americans in the pocketbook from coast to coast. A key inflation indicator closely watched by the Federal Reserve jumped nearly 6.5% since last year, setting a 40-year high as prices for everything from gas to groceries continues to skyrocket.
Mind that those rising oil and gasoline prices, it can filter through to the costs of other goods and services. Everything you buy off the shelf in a store, it got there either by plane, train, or automobile. And so those higher costs in time will filter through even to non-petroleum or energy-related items.
Meantime, Team Biden is scheming to spend even more of our taxpayer dollars as Sleepy Joe unveils his $5.8 trillion budget proposal for 2023.
Well, the budget I'm releasing today sends a clear message to the American people that what we value. First, fiscal responsibility. Second, safety and security. And thirdly, the investments needed to build a better America. But because we have to put this economy in a strong foundation, even the Delta and Omicron variants of COVID-19 and the cost of Putin's aggression in Ukraine have not required an additional fiscal package for state and local governments. But we still spend what we need to spend to continue to fight COVID. But those expenditures will be dramatically less than last year.
Well, among the earmarks in the bloated budget plan, $10.6 billion to address global health issues and an additional $10 billion to ramp up immunization programs. There's also $2.6 billion set aside to advance gender equity and equality across a broad range of sectors. Meantime, Americans are paying the price. According to Bloomberg, Biden inflation will cost American families $5,200 this year. That's $433 a month and comes on top of the $3,500 Americans paid last year due to Bidenomics. Even liberal economists say Biden's reckless spending is to blame, including Obama and Clinton economist Larry Summers.
The administration's budget and the administration's forecast with this stimulus was that this year we'd have 2% inflation, and it's likely to come in 3 times that. I think they're just not recognizing just how much demand is being created by the tremendous wall of money, 15% of GDP in 1 year that they released last spring.
Summers isn't the only prominent Democrat economist blasting Biden's reckless spending. Former Obama economist Jason Furman believes Biden's spending spree is way too big.
This is the type of thing that's going to start to move those inflation expectations. So, yes, I think the problem is you can point to all sorts of transitory things, strip all of those out, add in what we know about how much demand we have in our economy, how little supply we still have. I think this bears some caution and should change the way people are thinking about the economy.
Jason, what do you think that means for the relief package we passed just a couple of months ago when Larry Summers and others, including Olivier Blanchard, came out and said it was too big for the moment we're in? Do you think this is evidence of that?
Oh, it's definitely too big for the moment. I don't know any economist that was recommending something the size that what was done. The question is how big the downside was.
And even Biden's Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is critical of Sleepy Joe spending boondoggles, forced to admit that his nearly $2 trillion stimulus plan spiked inflation.
Create inflation. Did $2 trillion of deficit spending create inflation?
It did boost demand, and that is one of several factors that are involved in inflation.
Joining us now with his take on Bidenomics, editor at the Daily Wire, Ian Haworth. Ian, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So, Biden is set to release 180 million barrels from oil reserves, and he talked about that today during his press conference. That would reduce the Strategic Petroleum Reserve to the lowest levels since 1984. A White House Energy Secretary is saying that the administration has no plans to change any regulations in the oil industry. The best way to lower gas prices, they said, is to speed up their transition away from fossil fuels. As she, of course, always mentions electric vehicles as if we could all afford them. But here's a bullet point list of how the White House has tried to lower gas. 1, tapping strategic reserves. 2, pushing OPEC and to pump more oil. 3, asking the FTC to investigate the alleged price gouging. So officials say these companies are to blame, and Biden will call on Congress to add additional fees to oil companies that are holding these leases that have been drilled on. Remember those? Those oil executives will be in front of a House Energy Committee next week, and we will undoubtedly hear about the unfriendly regulatory environment that the White House has created. But again, back to this, the average cost of electric vehicles is $60,000. Ian, so how are the American people going to afford this? How can they go to this plan as if it's a working thing?
Well, obviously they can't. And I think the electric vehicle issue is a fantastic metaphor for Biden and his administration's entire attitude, really to everything to do with energy, is they seriously think that a $56,000 car, that's the average price for an electric vehicle in the United States, is the solution for people who have less and less money in their pocket every single month because of Biden's economic plans and the inflation we're seeing. I put out a tweet earlier that he was boasting $80 a month savings on an electric car, and if that's a $56,000 car, we're talking decades before you've even paid it back. It's simply not an option for really the average American. But these are the same people in government who scoffed at the idea that $1.25, $1.50 in stores like Dollar Tree was not that big a deal. The thing is, when people are living on a small budget, every single bite out of that budget is a huge deal if you don't have as much money as many people in government do. So you've got multimillionaires like Biden, Bernie Sanders, and even Pete Buttigieg talking about electric cars as if that's a solution. Well, most people can't just go down to their local Tesla, slap down the credit card and buy one. It's just laughing in the average American's face, quite frankly.
Right, and these are the same guys that own private jets too? If I'm just making that clear.
Just a few.
There's just a few. So there's a plus, Ian, there is a 2-year wait list for electric vehicles. So it's like we can't just get it. I mean, there is a waiting list. We have to wait in line. I'm guessing there's a huge line for that too. Many people have probably hopped on board. And it's only 3% of sales. The White House is asking for 50%, but we simply just can't wait by then.
Well, also, let's remember that these electric cars don't run on dreams. They run on electricity, and so we have to get the electricity from somewhere. That's still going to require power. And if we move towards green energy more and more, we have seen multiple states that the kind of green solutions they're discussing aren't a solution. And the fact that Joe Biden is ignoring the fact that at least of 2016, the United States was sitting on the most untapped oil in the world, the fact that he is point blank refusing to take advantage of the kind of natural resources the United States is blessed to have, just shows that he's living in a dreamland, that any problem has the solution that is related to climate change. The fact we can look at war in Ukraine and John Kerry can worry about the impact it's going to have on climate change. They have a few very key issues they actually care about, and everything else just gets twisted and gets pushed back into addressing those issues. And so when it comes to a collapsing economy or an energy crisis, of course that's an opportunity to try and push green energy, and I'm sure that's going to line the pockets of some people they're very close with. Whether or not that'll actually solve the problem doesn't really matter. Certainly someone like Joe Biden and his contemporaries, they're all in their 70s and 80s. The real issue we're going to see is in the next couple of decades, if we cripple Americans by forcing them into green energy, we're going to see a kind of economic collapse that makes today look like nothing. But Joe Biden doesn't care, because it's all just about sucking up to the people who are more and more progressive, more and more radical on his side, telling them what they want to hear in this case.
Yeah, it's like what we gain in progressivism, it's we lose in being a moderate. It's pretty sad to watch. Ian, the White House comms director was asked about this. We're going to pull it up first, and I'm going to get your reaction after.
Did it create inflation? Did $2 trillion of deficit spending create inflation?
It did boost demand, and that is one of several factors that are involved in inflation.
So, Ian, this is what happened yesterday. The White House comms director was asked about this in a press briefing, about what happened with then VP Biden, if there was anything inappropriate or unethical about Hunter's business dealings with his relationships, too, with China and Ukraine. She then says nothing, and then refers to President Trump. So this is nothing new here. We're asking a question about Hunter Biden and his involvement with these foreign leaders and oligarchs, and yet she points the finger at Trump. It's unbelievable. She won't answer the question. She's dodging it.
Well, she won't answer the question because no, they don't want anyone to know the answer. There's quite clearly something wrong here. The fact that Hunter Biden made any money when he's just a drug addict degenerate. It's just very indicative of politics more generally. I'm not going to pretend this isn't a problem on the right. It just happens that the left are in power right now, and so they're going to talk about whataboutism on our side. And then when we have someone in power, often many of us will just refer back to the other side. I don't have a lot of faith in politicians generally. I think there are a lot of people who see politics as a way to enrich themselves, and I think the Biden family are an excellent example of that. And so you look at Nancy Pelosi too, for example, with her very, very lucky stock picks over and over again. I think it's just a problem in politics that we as Americans and American voters have a chance to get rid of. We just have to choose the right people, and Biden is certainly not one of those right people.
Well, surely, but I mean, at least from the media's front, they haven't been talking about this for day 260, 270 now. I'm losing count. What will it finally take for them to cover this? Because it is a big deal.
Mm-hmm. They never will. They have no interest in doing it because the media and the left are one and the same. They are basically the PR firm for the Democratic Party. There really is no reason that they would ever show anything that was negative of Biden, even when he was single-handedly setting fire to Afghanistan and abandoning Afghan girls to sex slavery. They covered it for about a day or so and then moved on. The media really have no incentive to undermine their own narrative, which is the Democratic Party narrative. They're just going to really keep shilling for them, keep pushing us back to what Trump did. Trump is irrelevant now. He is not in office. He doesn't hold any office. Joe Biden is the one in office causing a lot of these problems. I think we're going to be waiting a very long time, though, before we see the media admit to any of that.
They have nothing. That's why they keep using Trump. And it's what gave them ratings, too, by the way. So I'm sure they miss that so dearly. Ian, thanks so much for joining us today. Always great to see you.
Thanks for having me.